Want to waste too much time, so let's jump into it. Welcome everyone. I hope everyone is still awake and very ready to learn, even though we are heading towards the end of the week. But you're welcome today. Two of our Yellow Seed IOP experts are really going to talk a lot about equipping line managers to lead the war of talent and how can we actually build that capability across the business as well. We will try to aim to specifically focus on how can we as HR or IOP professionals actually assist and equip and empower line managers to just help them also understand what is their role when it comes to effective talent management. So if this is all a surprise to you, now you know this is what you are gonna hear a lot about today. So buckle up and enjoy the ride, I guess. Yeah, I think my mom would have scolded me a long time ago because I didn't introduce myself. So before we start, let me maybe just introduce myself as well as our two very exceptional speakers today. So I am Lisa Schindler. I am a registered industrial psychologist and a consultant at Yellow Seed who loves everything talent, baked cheesecake, and also learning a lot from the two that's going to speak today. Yeah, let me introduce maybe Lumay to you guys. So Lumay, maybe you can give everyone a wave. I know your name is there, but maybe everyone can see. So Lumay is one of the founders of Yellow Seed, as well as one of our directors, and she's also the head of people development, to which I almost want to say, duh. Why? Why do I say that? Because Lumay is really such an outstanding talent expert, and she specializes in really all things talent. I did write out the whole list and I decided, no, I have to say all things talent because that is literally all things talent. Although I think she's an expert in, lots of other things like OD and leadership development. Yeah, she's had exceptional success in talent management and leading that for quite a lot of massive and large organizations. I actually wonder sometimes if there's anything she doesn't know about talent management. And I just thought, I'll definitely probably bet my money on her to win a talent quiz for sure. But anyway, so welcome, Lumay. It's nice to have you here. And yeah, we're so excited to hear from you. Yeah, then of course, Storm. Storm is our other speaker today. She's one of our senior consultants at Yellow Seed. And while Storm is a woman of many consulting talents, she's actually established herself as a very well-known talent management specialist as well. Storm has worked with gigantic institutions too, bringing, I want to say, a lot of talent miracles to their teams. And I think that's obviously through her comprehensive skill set and knowledge as well. I've witnessed it myself. So just like Lumay, she's also had extensive experience in all things talent. And I've also realized that she thinks it's fun to look for the craziest talent challenge and then to solve it. But anyway, welcome Storm. It's really nice to have you here and we can't wait to pick your brain too. Okay. Maybe I thought before I give over to our wonderful speakers, let me maybe start off with just some quick context. It is, I would say it's a fact that talent management is not exclusive to talent or L&D teams. In fact, line managers and senior managers need to understand, and not only understand, but also be committed to effectively execute the organization's people strategy. But I think we all know that talent management is one thing among a multitude of other responsibilities that's on line managers' plates. And if we don't know it, we've definitely seen it in research that managers actually also seem to be more burdened than ever at the moment. So I think as part of, well, not as part, but also what's part of the reality is on top of that, they have to cultivate new skills for changes, all the emerging changes, manage lots of workloads, and also deal with consistent change. So what I am trying to say is that HR teams or IOPs, we actually play a pivotal role in just transforming, I want to say, managers into actually advocates for talent management and talent development as well. And that leads me to a quick question. So I'm going to share my screen. If you can quickly grab your phone, that would be wonderful. and you can go to menti.com. So let me maybe share my screen, and that will be easier to follow. So yeah, you can see that at the top of the screen, it says just go to menti.com. So you can put that in your browser and you'll see there's a code at the top of the screen as well. It says 71613071. Maybe some you can just pop it in the chat for us too. And the question I just want to pose quickly is, how effectively do you think we are supporting and empowering our line managers to actually own talent management practices? Let's see, yeah, what you guys are thinking and feeling. All right, we've got currently 5 people saying adequately, but definitely room for improvement, and 2 people saying insufficient, in need of desperate improvement. 9 people now at adequately. I'm going to give it another 10 seconds so I can see what the rest of you are thinking. Alrighty. Let me pause there. So we can see that, and I see that number going up. So majority of you saying adequately, however, there is probably room for enhancement, and then a few people slowly but surely also adding to that other one that says insufficient and actually need of desperate improvement. And yeah, I think I'm not surprised to see that. I think looking at those results and keeping it in mind, we actually, and that's I think what we want to get across today too, we believe that HR managers or IOPs really need to find a compelling way for line managers to see the impact of making informed talent decisions, but then also to equip them with the knowledge and the tools that they need to actually make a difference in the talent management space. I'll add a last 2 cents and then I'll stop. Then I'll give over to the speakers. But yeah, I've recently seen McKinsey that did research regarding the main obstacles on, well, to effective talent management. And the research was actually based on 98 managers across 46 organizations. And they found in that research, 59% of that managerial group said senior management does not spend enough time managing talent. 45% of those managers said line managers are not sufficiently involved in the development of their subordinates, specifically regarding their careers and their potential, so really absent in talent development. 40% of that pool said line managers are reluctant to divide subordinates into best, average, and weakest contractors, so also quite hesitant to be involved in talent ID. And 39% of them also said top management is not sufficiently involved in creating a talent management strategy. And I think all of that just really highlights to us again what's that massive need, or there is a massive need to bring line managers closer to talent management. Okay, that is my whole spiel. I thought I'll just break the ice a bit and give some context. I hope that made sense, or that helps to see where we are going with this. So that's it from me for now. Storm, you can maybe take over and perhaps tell us more about the line manager context.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks for taking us to this point. What I heard was, I think we've got the right people on the call here in terms of how you are perhaps supporting and empowering your line managers to take up more of the talent management, or take up more of a role in talent management. So great to have you here, and I think we're really excited. We hope to share some awesome tools and just experiences to get you thinking differently. And so before doing that, I just perhaps want to paint a bit more of that picture so we can better understand the context in which our line managers find themselves, so that we can angle ourselves and position ourselves within that to equip them where necessary. So Lisa did a great part in highlighting the importance of our line managers as talent managers. It hasn't been clearer, right? And to build on some of those stats as I roll us into it is, yeah, so we know employees that report into effective managers, they themselves are 15 times more likely to be high performers. So if we recognize the knock-on effect and the consequences of how our line managers perform and the effect on our employees, we can already start gauging how that impacts talent and what we identify or define as talent, right? And they're likely to that, they are 3 times more likely to stay with their employees. So obviously, you have high performers, we want to retain them. So again, equating to retention and engagement and how we keep our our employees in business. I think we've got a great, we should, yeah, skills are scarce. And the changing landscape, we want to keep on to what we've got, especially considering the time and money invested into our people in the business. But so I'm going to check our colleagues on the call here's knowledge, and we're going to go through this section through Kahoot. So Lisa did already tell you to pick up yourselves, so hold on to them. It's not something we often encourage in terms of engagement virtually, but I think this is just a fun way to catch you in the room and get your feedback. So please pull up your cell phones. I'm going to share screen and we're going to be working through Kahoot. So for those that are familiar, log on kahoot.it so long. I'm showing my screen with some of the instructions, and you'll be asked to put in a game pin again. See my screen here. I'm going to put a bit of a jingle while you might be sitting alone at the last hours of the workday or traveling, whatever the case is, ease into it. So on your cell, you put Kahoot IT. It'll take you to the login page where you put your game pin in. I can see our first one, Z. And you'll see it's not so invasive. It asks you for a nickname already. So ease into it, play the pseudo name, and let's see what you've got to share with us. Right, I'm going to just give it a moment for everyone to log on. If you are struggling, you just drop a note in the chat box as well. Give us another 30 seconds. If you haven't caught the game pin or how to log in and you are struggling in the back end, like I said, drop it in the chat box. Lisa and the team is there to support you. Lisa will also just note again the Kahoot.it in the chat as well as the pin, because if I do start and you haven't caught up, you haven't joined just yet, you can catch up. Awesome. So I'm going to jump into it. We've got the majority on board here. Like I said, if your hands are tied at the moment, check the chat. But so the first item here is just a general one. We want to think about what role, let me not get too ahead of it, yeah? But so what role do you think line managers actually play in talent management and across our practices here? Do you use your cell phone to answer? Have a look at the screen. Select your answer by the color, the shape of the block. We've done both. Considering eyesight, attention to detail. So what role do you think line managers actually play in talent management? And between those options, do they dabble in recruitment and selection and onboarding, performance management, career development and succession planning, or employee engagement and retention? And for the majority of the group, all of the above, right? They play in all of the above, start to end our value chain in terms of talent management practices. They really do influence each of these areas. And so we really need to be mindful in terms of what that potentially looks like and what the context of that appears for them. I'm emphasizing that as well. And we've realized the pandemic over the last 4 years, COVID-19, and the shifts that have happened. But I still believe we're feeling the consequences thereof as we get sophisticated with technology, as we improve. It's constantly changing, and it's just to be mindful of. It's the start of it, and it's really just increase the growth and the change that we need to be mindful of. Having said that, we are going to take a quick look at our winner. When a winner is on top of our leaderboard here. Hope you can keep up. And we're going to jump into the second item. Yeah, so it's a multi-select. I'll give you a chance to read the item. What are the key elements of hybrid work models introduced post-pandemic? So thinking about what are the work models that have been introduced since 2020. This music hasn't got a new race yet. I don't know what else is for the last part of today. Awesome. So the answer here is a combination of remote and in-office work as well as flexible hours. I think you might have felt that personally, and or you really have witnessed it for colleagues in your space. So I just want to stop there for a moment and consider what this potentially looks like. Before, work arrangements were really traditional in office. There was a limited flexibility, and we really went with it until we were pushed quite rapidly to adapt the way in which we work, and still expected to deliver as much of the output as possible with what we have in our at reach, right? So pandemic did accelerate the acceptance of flexible work arrangements, being that the hybrid models combined with remote and in-office work, as well as the flexible time. The impact on this, however, was that there was fewer in-person interactions, right? And so line managers had to reframe their thinking and be mindful of how to consider team cohesion and communication now through digital means, but also be mindful of talent management strategies that had to adapt to the diverse working settings so that we can ensure the employee engagement and productivity. We think about, again, how do they engage? How do they keep on board? How do they develop? That all had to shift to think about keeping that engagement now without sight of those employees in office come on seat. Our second quiz here is a multi-select, so you can choose a number of items in terms of how has the focus on employee well-being shifted after the pandemic. So how do you think employee well-being has shifted since the pandemic? We've got 10 seconds, folks, if you want to get your last thought in there. We've got a leaderboard running. I haven't put too much attention to it just yet, but it is there. LeMay, I'm putting it on you to let us know what the winner gets. But right, so here it is, and so good to see everyone on board in terms of where our thinking is at, and that yeah, that the focus is there too. So well-being has shifted with an increased focus on mental health as well as greater support for work-life balance. I think we can all realize working from home, how the boundaries and lines become blurred, and how do you help and better equip our line managers to manage that. Leaderboard, yeah, winner, you're still on top there, with some of the leaderboard shuffling around. Can do a bit of a win in the background there for you. But so just back to that note about how the pandemic has heightened awareness of employee well-being. And so talent management practices, as well as the line managers have to have a greater focus on supporting employees' mental health. So providing resources on work-life balance, addressing burnout to maintain healthy and productive workforce. They have now, line managers will now need to shift thinking, include thinking to consider that. So again, if you can start painting the picture, I know we're really just touching into it, but what are skills that traditional line managers had, and what are now our sort of agile working line managers needing to be able to support this, to consider mental health? What role are they playing in their engagements with employees at this level? And it will come a bit clearer as we paint more of this context for you. Having another look at how has the recruitment process changed since the pandemic. The recruitment process, including some of that selection, onboarding. I think we're starting to catch the drift of the shift here, and potentially the skill that is going to be required from our line managers as they navigate the new environment. Right? It's a bit more tough with these questions. So that's it. So they started to shift to more virtual interviews and online assessments with come the number of different challenges to face themselves in terms of, if you think about virtual interviews, have you put in place to recognize who is at the end of that screen? Online assessments, is the right person doing that assessment? Is it trustworthy? How do you gauge for that? Again, the line managers will now have to think and consider other challenges and be better equipped to manage this talent practice a part of with these apart changing. And so the increased on focus on online assessment. Whenever you hold on there, decaf, you're going without the caffeine, I'm assuming, so keep it up. Z close behind there. So like I've mentioned, really having recruitment processes become more virtual. The onboarding process, along with that, has also had to adapt to welcome new hires remotely and ensuring a smooth integration into the organization. And back to our line managers in terms of this, how are they making the connection with this remote work, with this virtual engagement to ensure good introduction into the business, good onboarding, that they absorb and align with our culture and buy into to be more productive as would be expected. Here's an exciting one for me. So there's significant change in performance management after the pandemic. That's exciting because it's one of the projects close to me at the moment, and it's been really interesting to learn and see how large organizations are shifting in terms of performance management and feedback and whatnot. Right, so the significant change here has been the emphasis on continuous feedback and goal setting, right? So we are mindful of, and I'll check in with the leaderboard in a moment, but I really just want us to consider how conventional performance management was evolved around annual reviews, a point of time feedback session. It was really process orientated, where now we have shifted to more continuous feedback, giving feedback on the fly as necessary. That we see a issue, a situation, a potential recognition. Let's give it on the spot, right? And it's also moved to an outcome-based approach. Considering this, our line managers need to have also evolved, considering to be better coaches and teachers, to give this feedback on the fly, to not just follow the processes, but to be more aware of what is happening around them, be more tuned with their people, and also be able to call a feedback in the moment at the time, rather than waiting for a process to guide that and produce it. And I think I want to pause a moment and just bring back some of the statistics as you recognize how the context has changed and starting to realize more and more so what skills our line managers are needing to be equipped with to manage the people and the practices that go hand in hand. That the recent study showed, and from Gallup, that only 40% of our managers actually feel well equipped to handle their responsibilities, thinking of how that role has changed from pre-pandemic to now and as it progresses. Okay, so really interesting. And I think, again, the call to be here today, to hear, to learn from each other is hugely valuable in terms of how do we get them better equipped? How do we bring them on board to support our talent management practice? You're not off the call just yet. So the next question we're going through is the digital transformation and how it's been impacted since the post-pandemic. I love to see those responses getting tricky. I'll take notes of setting this timer a bit shorter for next time around. His fingers going a lot faster. For the sake of all the answers in, I'm going to, I want to skip through it, otherwise you might lose the answer there, but there has been a significant increase in the need for digital skills and competencies, right? So being able to turn teams on beginning of April 2020 to now how we can navigate with the cool function build, that's just one example. But again, it's a call to how the remote collaboration and the acceleration of digital transformation has increased the demand for these digital skills, right? AI is now being introduced. It's enabling reports and auditing and feedback. And so we really need to be mindful of how we integrate those as support tools, but also manage our employees around that in terms of developing them, retaining them, and supporting them in making use of it the best possible way. Winner, you're there, Al, you're close behind. And I've just spoken to more about that digital transformation. Coming into the next item here, the quiz, and we want to think about which factors have driven the need for upskilling and reskilling post-pandemic. So what factors have driven the need for upskilling and reskilling post-pandemic? Right, so the increased reliance on technology, I think I gave that away just before this, but also the rapid changes in the business landscape. And again, the need just to repaint this picture for you in terms of what the business looks like, keeping up with those statistics, the trends, and just being considerate of our line managers and us on the call here, potentially equipping those to better perform and support the practices that we likely put in place. Al, you're on fire. Winner, where did you go? Second winner, you're here. Z, you got on top of our leaderboard there. Right, and so I've mentioned already just in terms of how the need for the skill has changed. But if you consider again the way in which we approach the skill development, before it was really formal training programs and limited to upskilling initiatives, where now we're looking at urgent skill development, right, to address what we've got, but also addressing skills gap, where we're realizing where our people are at and we're needing to be quite future focused in where they need to be. And we're thinking about how do we shift our practices to identify and address those gaps before we're too late, before we're left behind with the ever-changing environment. Second last item we've got here, which following best describes agile talent management practices post-pandemic. What does agile talent management look like? Awesome. Flexible approaches and rapid adjustments. And I'll get to this in a moment. I just want to give a look at who we're at here. Z up on the board there, holding strong. And so if you consider what the term agile means, really being flexible in the way in which we do it, where before we were quite rigid, it was really predictable. If you think about performance reviews happened within a process at a certain time within the year, we knew what we were doing when it came to. Now we've got to be a bit more flexible around that process. If we're having feedback on the fly, how do we take that information? It's new, it's great. How do we make use of that data? Where does it input into, and how do we act quicker on it to whether engage, develop, or retain our talent? Rapid adjustments in the approaches we're taking. And again, having our line managers part of this, we really want them to be upskilled, empowered to take initiative where they see that a change might happen, or how they can be intentionally different about what we're doing, all in the better effect of supporting our employees and performance in the business. And our last one to end us off with quick true or false. The pandemic has prompted organizations to rethink their talent mobility strategies. True or false? And this is just an off the bat one, I think, to gauge where we're at that mobility. True. Great. And that is it. So the pandemic has really prompted organizations to rethink their talent mobility strategies. With the virtual world of work that has opened up, there's opportunities now for global workforces. organizations are needing to really leverage the talent from diverse locations and at the same time be so mindful of our employees also have that exposure, right? I was in a call the other day and yeah, I'm getting a bit into a bit of a case piece here, but it was very fascinating to see one of our colleagues sitting in Dubai that had kept such great connections working here for a company in South Africa. And I think we need to just be mindful of what opportunity that opens up for our employees, and also as line managers, how do we retain that great skill that we've invested in terms of identifying them, recognizing them, developing, keeping them engaged, and again retain. Because I think so easy now that with the open with the diverse locations opening up so much opportunity for our employees that we don't want to neglect the possibilities of other opportunities that they're exposed to with that. And so the message I'm trying to say is just reminding our line managers of the responsibility and also the position that they find themselves in, being so contact and close with our employees that they can hold on to it, and they need to be mindful of how they influence that talent management practice in that space. Sorry, I rambled up on that. I'm quite passionate. But so if you have a look at our Kahoots and just the podium here, in third place, Decaf. Great job without caffeine, I'm assuming. Second, Z. And first here we have Spotlight Anya and a pat on the back. Awesome job, everybody. Thank you for participating. I think what I want to leave us with hereafter is just the idea of, so what are the positive and potential negative impacts that line managers can have on creating a favorable talent development experience for their team members? And you're welcome to leave it in the chat. We'd love to hear feedback, and I'm going to hand over in a moment. So I'd love to, like I mentioned, drop it in the chat and have some of the conversation there or even offline. But just considering where the position our line managers hold and it being really valuable in terms of them having direct contact with the employees, and our human capital business partners or our talent managers supporting our line managers to be more effective and empowered in that role. Think about what that impact is that they have. Again, this really it creates a burning platform for why we're looking at empowering them, considering the skills they need and how we can better equip them. Okay. Cool. So I'm going to leave it there in the chat. I can waffle on about more of it and I'd love to share more. But for the sake of time, and I will definitely jump back to it in terms of when we get to sharing some of what those experiences potentially look like. But LeMay, if you want to jump in and take us maybe, define some of the skills I lingered on through to in painting that context, that would be awesome.
Thanks, Storm. Yeah, and I'll share my slides in a second, but maybe wanted to just link to two things. I think line managers are dealing with more than they've ever had to. So the requirement, what employees are requiring of our line managers and what's on their plates, I think is extremely full. And so that's why we're seeing the burnout numbers that we are seeing within the leader level. And I also want to highlight that as a talent community, and we work with clients from all different industries and different countries and different sizes of organization. But consistently, I think a lot of the challenges that we deal with as a team is that even our capacity is limited. And so we have to rely on our line managers, even if we've got the most beautiful talent potential framework and we've got really cool tech that helps us pick talent and identify talent, and we've got fantastic development opportunities. If our line managers are not driving the right actions, if our line managers are not enabling some of these activities, it's not going to have that impact. So I think that's really, to your point, Storm, around, the impact of COVID-19, it's just exacerbated the requirement of line managers for us to be successful. And so that's why we're so passionate about how do we bring in line managers whenever we go into an organization and support on talent strategy or talent implementation. we always bring in, how do we support the line managers? Because if you don't do that, it's going to be a moot point. You're going to invest a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy into creating beautiful outputs, but you need your line managers to drive that. So yeah, that's really why we're so passionate about line managers, and also to allow for personalized. So even if you work in a 10,000 size employee organization, that's what a lot of employees are looking for, and especially in scarce skills, you need to provide that. And there's no way that your talent team of 3 or 4 or 5, if you're lucky, maybe 10, can provide that for all of your employees. So you really rely on your line managers to do that. But okay, let me quickly share my screen. Do the rest. Okay. So we wanted to just share some tips and practical ways that we have gone about supporting some of our clients. And as Storm was saying, and he's also positioned this, we're co-creating this with our clients, with you, our colleagues on the call. And so please feel free to share things in the chat if you've seen what works, what doesn't work. It's being agile means it's evolving, it's iterative, right? So as we do it, we're growing and we're all learning and co-creating it together. But I think what we start off with is for line managers to understand, what do we mean when we say talent management? And let's break it down. It's really about, we need the right people, we need them in the right roles, they need to have the right capabilities, and they need to be deployed at the right time. And it sounds really simple to be able to do those things, but it's actually quite tricky, especially when our operating models are changing constantly, which means our roles, our org design, what's required of any given person. For those of us who are who have a lot of agile work processes, having those roles clearly defined, it changes with every sprint. So the right roles might be tricky, or finding the right people might be tricky, because we need to really articulate, what does that look like? What is a good culture fit, a good individual fit? What does that look like? And how do we go and source and assess and identify what those people look like, and if they're right? Might be that we're struggling with capabilities. We also do a lot of research around future skills and future capabilities, and we've realized that it's really difficult to articulate what capabilities do we want in future. We know what we needed yesterday. We have kind of a good idea of what we're looking for today, but it's really difficult to identify what do we need in future, and then deploying it just in time, which for most of us, we often are too late, because it takes time to develop those capabilities. It takes time to recruit them. It takes time to get them retained and engaged. And so often we're just not there yet when the business needs it. So it seems quite simple, but it's actually quite tough. And that's why we need our managers to really help us get the right people in the right roles with the right capabilities at the right time. And so I wanted to just paint the picture. This is a model that we share when we do upskilling for talent or L&D professionals and specialists, because it kind of covers, what does the whole ecosystem, the talent management ecosystem, look like? And it taps into capability mapping, and how do we evaluate, how do we segment the whole talent value chain, how do we recruit, manage careers, do succession development, etc. And it's got very strong well-being components. So we would go through all of these different aspects when we do training for our experts, our talent and leadership, our learning experts. But when we talk to line managers, we need to keep it simple, because they're dealing with so much. They've got a lot on their plate. And if we show them this picture, they feel like, oh, it's too much over and above the work that I need to do, the people that I need to keep happy, all of the different deliverables. And so in essence, it's really, we need you to help us spot talent. We need you to help engage with talent. We need you to help develop talent. And if we can really help them understand their role in those three buckets, I think a lot of progress can already be made. And so that's one of the key principles that we've just realized, is that for all organizations working with line managers, let's keep it simple. If we complicate it, they're already overwhelmed. That's not going to be helpful. And so I'm going to just quickly give some lessons learned, I suppose, from these three areas and what we've shared. So if we think about the line manager as talent spotter, there's some really cool research that tried to identify what differentiates an effective talent spotter from a non-effective talent spotter. And some of the clear characteristics that came out in the research is that effective talent spotters are able to differentiate between performance and potential, and they have a very clear idea of what that difference looks like. Whereas for non-effective talent spotters, it's blurred. It's mostly they overestimate current performance, and they usually use that as a predictor of potential. And so to the next point, effective talent spotters are really good at matching to future roles. They could visualize a candidate in light of the demands of the next organizational level, whereas non-effective spotters really only think about the current level, the current role, and they struggle to actually envision and see what do those potential indicators look like at the next level, at a more complex role. Additionally, effective talent spotters were really good at designing development challenges in a gradual but very careful way to tailor it to where the candidate is at, and how they could create stretch assignments or work rotations or whatever those development challenges might be to help harness the potential and get them to that next level. So it was very deliberate, it was very intentional, it was strategic, based on their matching, based on the differentiation between this is the performance, they're a high performer, but okay, how do we harness the potential for a specific next level? Whereas our non-effective talent spotters, when asked about how you're going to develop your people, they mostly focused on, okay, well, I can enlarge their jobs or I can delegate more. The intentionality and the strategic thinking behind it wasn't necessarily there. And so this is quite a useful study just to think about, if we want to equip line managers, we need to do three things to help them be better talent spotters. Help them understand, really grasp what is performance versus potential. Help them think through, what does this look like for future roles? And then the third one is to be a lot more strategic when they think about development challenges and tailoring it to the individual based on either the performance or potential criteria. And an interesting fact, through this research, they also realized that years of leadership experience had no effect on the manager's effectiveness as a talent spotter. So just because you've been a leader for a longer time doesn't mean that you become better at spotting talent. It might mean that you just reinforce the bias or the non-effective way of thinking that you've been doing all along. So in terms of then mapping out that potential versus performance, this is a model that we love to use. And so we love to then introduce to managers, if you want to understand performance, it's typically two things. You tap into the individual's character. Are they exhibiting our values? Do they support our mission? Character, and then track record. Do they have a track record of high performance? And that track record is important because we're not just looking at the last cycle. It could be that we're in a market where that has influenced our performance, or a particular customer segment, or it's in a new role, or whatever that case may be. So if we're trying to think about strategic talent planning, we need to think about not just the last cycle, but the track record of performance. If we think about potential, we like to explain it in looking at aspiration, cognitive agility, and leadership capability. If we start with the end, that's probably one that's more dominant. So most leaders would think about, okay, could this person lead? Could they take on more senior roles? Are they displaying natural leadership abilities? But then we also need to understand what is required from a cognitive perspective. If we're going into more complex decision making, can they deal with ambiguity? Do they have that ability? And this is really tough to actually assess. So we have to translate, what does this mean in terms of behavioral indicators? What would this look like if I were to assess that within my employees? But then the third one that's often missed is aspiration. And that's why this can only be addressed through line manager conversations. There's no way that the talent team or the L&D team can uncover aspiration, because this really happens in those one-on-ones, regular feedback conversations. But do they seek to excel and grow? Are they interested in moving into more complex positions? And what we've started to introduce, especially with our line managers and what some of the trends and the data that's coming through, is that a part of the talent conversation is really well-being. And you can have performance and you can have potential, but even if you've got both of those and your well-being is low, if you're burnt out, if you're really disengaged, if you're so exhausted by the amount of work that you're doing, that's going to have a tremendous impact on whether or not we can place you into a succession role, into something that's more complex. And so we would go through and really help line managers understand each of these different aspects. And this, for example, is just one tool that we use where we give them almost a decision-making tree. So you start with, is this person consistently exhibiting values? If yes, okay, great, then go on to the next one. If no, then this is the strategy that you can follow. Then the next one, if yes, go up. If no, then try this. So it's almost guiding them. What do you do when someone is stuck on a particular level? And how do you differentiate your action as a leader based on where this person is at? So just maybe two tips around talent spotting. If we think about the line manager as talent engager, I love this research by Gartner that highlighted the different types of management styles. And why I love this study so much is that it moves on from in the 90s and 80s, a lot of the leadership work was on transactional versus transformational management styles. And it was almost like, well, duh, of course, transformational is better than transactional. And what the research by Gartner has done is that all four of these styles are actually they look positive. They're positively inclined. So your teacher manager, a lot of advice, relies on track record, considers their approach correct, and they want to teach their approach. The always on manager, and if you look at the impact of that, that actually had a degrading effect on employee performance, gives frequent feedback and coaching, regularly goes the extra mile, gives them in the moment coaching and feedback, even when they lack personal experience, and ensure they drive all employee development, which in essence sounds great, but it's putting pressure on the employee that's actually having the opposite effect. The cheerleader manager empowers employees, gives positive feedback, doesn't obsess over details. And then the connector manager, which the research showed, really bringing out the best in employees. And I really want to encourage you, go and read up on the connector manager and the research that Gartner has done. I'm not able to go through it in detail, but in essence, what managers do well in terms of engaging their employees is that they provide good connection with their employees. They really know who they are. They invest, they try to understand, they coach the person, they have a strong connection, a relational connection with their employees. Secondly, they make a strong team connection. So they bring in the entire team. They realize, I don't have all of the skills. All of us develop each other. And they embrace those individual differences and try and enable that connection within the team. And then they also connect the dots in the organization, whether that's in terms of opportunities or networking, or actually this person would be a good mentor for you. They implement routines that would help them to warm up and cool down in specific situations, and they model those connections. So if we're trying to help our line managers connect, what does that look like? And this research, I just think, is super useful in helping them connect employees, connect the team, connect with the organization, and help them to drive, what do those conversations look like? So really making it quite practical. And so when we help our line managers, I think here's some of the things that we need to support with. How do we enable managers to get to know the strengths and development areas, both within themselves, but then also within their teams? And that's where psychometric data is really useful. 360s is really useful. Finding the criteria against which we want to define strengths and development areas. Help them understand engagement levels and retention risks. Help them uncover what are some of those questions that I can ask. How do we get data out of our engagement surveys? How do we, what does good retention criteria look like? How do I have a conversation around aspirations? How do I get insight on the well-being of my employees? It could be, it's not just mental health. It could be financial. It could be social. It could be physical. It could, there's so many different aspects of well-being. How do we help them improve performance? I think a lot of focus traditionally was on how do we improve performance, but it looks different in a hybrid world, to Storm's point. And how do we coach, mentor, and give feedback? And that's quite an important skill. All of this, why do we want line managers to engage with their talent? And that's because we need their inputs to enable strategic talent decision making. If you don't know the aspirations of your employee, we're going to send them on a program and on a development journey, and in the end, it's not going to return, perhaps because they have no aspiration to go on it. If we don't understand well-being, we might be investing in someone, throwing more development actions at them, when in fact, we need to be supporting them on well-being because maybe they're running empty. So we need to be able to have more strategic decisions, but we need data, we need input, we need our managers to have their ears on the ground and really understand where my people are at so that we can be more specific in what we, on the return and what we do with our employees. And then lastly, the line manager as talent developer. And I wanted to start with succession readiness. And we've done quite a lot of work on this with some of our clients in trying to, I think traditionally, our estimate of succession readiness was always, how long did it take the previous folk to get to this position? So it took me 4 years. So in essence, it's probably going to take the next person 3 years. And we've just found that that has been not very successful. It's not very accurate. The succession readiness indicators don't tend to move, so there's very little progress. And so what we're supporting line managers with is, if you want to determine succession readiness, it actually starts with the development. If we know the criteria of a particular role and the non-negotiable criteria, not the wish list, for you to do, to start moving into this position, you absolutely have to have these things, and you'll develop these others as you continue. But once we know what the criteria is, we can then determine what is the gap, where is the development required, and how will we develop these things. So if we're moving someone into a team leader role, and let's say communication and let's say communication is one of those development requirements, and we're understanding that communication is something that this manager is lacking, we can then think about what are the development actions. Are we going to send them on a communication course? Are we going to give them coaching? Are we going to assign them to a mentor that's really good at communication? Are we going to give them stretch assignments where we ask them to go and communicate, whether it be presentations that they do or facilitating certain conversations, etc.? But based on what those development actions are, that will actually help us define our readiness. Because if we're saying, well, the only way that you can develop this, let's say, for example, business acumen is a postgraduate, we want you to do an MBA and go and develop broad business acumen, then we know it's a 2 to 3 year readiness indicator, because that's how long it's going to take for your development to be done. If we're saying it's something really personal, let's say like self-awareness, we know you're not going to grow self-awareness in 6 months. It's going to take some time. You're going to do coaching, you're going to get feedback. It's going to take some time. So helping managers understand how long is this realistically required from a development point of view also helps them determine what are the priorities, what development actions do we need to take, and it helps us as talent to understand the real indicators of where we're at, what our succession bench looks like. So helping managers become really strategic, how do we do that? And many of you are maybe familiar with the build, buy, borrow framework. And I just love that, you know, some of the other B's that have come on since the pandemic. And so we know we have different options, and it depends on where our risks are. So we can build our talent pipeline, especially if we need to close skills gaps, and when it's difficult to buy those from externally and we have some time, or we can buy them if there's something really urgent and it's difficult to grow that internally. We can borrow them from freelancers or vendors or consultants for the time being as we transfer skills and knowledge. We can bounce, so that is when we need to remove our poor performers, or when there's unproductive roles, or reskilling people who had redundant skills and now can be reused in other areas of the business. We could use the bot, and that's where perhaps part of what we're needing to do with a particular individual, if we think about performance, for example, maybe some of the activities can actually be done through automation or through AI technology. And so part of a talent strategy could be, we're actually going to give those tasks to a bot so that we can use the capacity for something else that's more strategic. It could be that we're deploying the buying strategy where the main focus in this particular individual or a particular critical role is that we want to retain, and that's going to be part of our talent strategy. Could be that we want to boost, that we want to accelerate, which is different to build because it talks about the time frame. So build is kind of that consistent skill across maybe a level or across a specific functional area, whereas boost is there's specific people that we need to boost into specific position, which is often useful with your transformation agenda. And it could be bridge. So it could be that we involving a lot more lateral movement. So it could also be used as a retention strategy, but we're bridging from this area to that area. This cross-functional skill would be useful. It's not necessarily moving up, but we want to bridge so that you are moving different areas across functional areas. And so maybe just an example of how we've done this with clients in the past is using a simulation where we talk through and we ask leaders to actually make decisions. We would give them data about aspiration and track record and potential and well-being and all of the things that we know they need to actually get to know about their people. And then we give them scenarios where they need to make strategic decisions and they need to develop these people. And we use the 70-20-10 model. So for those of you that may be not familiar, we know that 70% of our learning happens experientially, 20% is through social interaction, and only 10% of our learning typically happens through formal education. But there's a place for each of these activities. And so what we want our line managers to understand is that it's not a wish list of, I don't know what to do with my people, let me just send them all on a conference, or I want everyone to just go on the leadership program that we've got. We want them to really think about, who is this person? What are their unique needs? Are they successes? What are the particular development areas? And what development opportunities will best address what we are looking for? And often they also don't think about all of the different activities. So for example, giving and receiving feedback, one of the options on the screen, to highlight to them, that is a learning activity. Or when I'm on leave and I give an acting opportunity to someone in my team, that is a learning opportunity. Presenting to others, reverse mentoring, communities of practice, knowledge sharing. I just highlighted some examples here, but really helping them think about what are those tactical, quite strategic initiatives that we can deploy. And it should look different to different people in my team. So how do we support line managers? I wanted to quickly highlight, and you can go and read up. This is a fantastic book by Donald Miller called Building a Story Brand. And one of the key things that we realize is we need to translate what it is that we need from our line managers into their language and into their world. So learning from our customer experience colleagues and our marketing colleagues who do this extremely well, they need to be the hero. Our line managers need to be the hero in the story. And this is a framework that Donald Miller shows, that if you want to influence and motivate anyone, you can use storytelling, and it's based on screenwriting. But in essence, if you want to get a line manager to buy into, let's say, a new talent framework, instead of shoving the framework at the line manager and telling the line manager why they have to and everything that you need to get out of it as the talent team, you need to translate it into, Mr. Line Manager, you are the hero of the story. And we know that you struggle with this problem. And because you struggle with this problem, we're here to help. And we understand how tough it is to do this thing. And so to help you better manage this thing, we're suggesting that this framework or this process is going to help alleviate that problem. And so to get there, we're going to need you to just, and you keep it simple. We're going to ask you to do this thing, not more than 3 actions. And if you're able to do that, this is how you're going to, this is the success that you're going to get out of it. And we just want to reiterate that if you don't do this, you'll likely remain. And then you list all of the things of the problem that they're probably experiencing right now. And so if we're able to do a really good job at translating what we're wanting their support into a what's in it for me message, how will this solve my problem as a line manager, we are a lot more likely to get buy-in. And a lot of the work that we've done for clients has been doing this piece. The frameworks are not needing redesign. The tools are great. The thinking, the competency frameworks, all of that, it's beautiful. But we need to get line managers to actually see what's in it for me, the change management, if you will. And so that's quite an important piece. And then I'll end off with this, and Lisa, then we can go into our next section. But I just thought 8 quick tips of how do we better support managers. So number 1, build that necessary foundational knowledge. What is performance? What is potential? What do we mean with retention risk? What do we mean when we say succession and succession criteria? Let's help them see the big picture and connect the dots. They often see, I'm doing a performance review now, and let's just get that done. And then 3 months later, I am hiring someone and busy with the hiring process. And then maybe later on, I'm being pulled into a succession conversation. And they often struggle to see the golden thread, especially when it comes to development. The development plan needs to have a link to every other action in the talent journey. When I have a conversation around performance, it must link to development. Career, link to development. Succession, link to development. Even hiring must link to development. So help them see that big picture. Understand their fears and concerns. Just as they are required to get to know their employees really well, we need to know them really well. And we need to understand what is on their plates, what are they struggling with, what challenges do they have on the system that keeps on giving them an error message, and then they say, oh, I just don't have time, I'm not going to do it. We need to know what that looks like. We need to provide a lot of guidelines and consistency, especially as the size of the organization increases. What do we mean with particular skills? What do we mean when we say potential? What do we mean when we say this particular behavior? It needs to be clear so that they can then use it and simplify it. Help them think past the now, not just what is required in terms of performance right now, but help them understand, what does the future skills look like? How are we developing for the future leaders? How are we bringing our graduates in and thinking already about the leadership positions that they will need to take on in 10 years' time? How do we simplify and help them prioritize? This is a big one because there's just so many things on their plates. And a good way to do this is to start with the risk areas. So what are our critical roles? Where do we have high risk areas? Let's start there. We're not going to say to them, do everyone all at once, all with the same priority. we start with where there is the biggest risk. Let's sort that out, and then we can go to other areas. Create awareness of all learning opportunities and really helping them understand that things like feedback and informal coaching and conversations, all of those are also learning opportunities. It's not just the Udemy license and the formal learning programs that we have in place and the NQF programs that we have in place. Once they understand that and understanding which of these are best utilized in which circumstances, a whole world opens up that, oh, okay, maybe it's giving them a stretch assignment. Maybe it's rotating them for a week. It doesn't have to be a long secondment. Maybe it's just setting up a knowledge sharing session. There's so many different ways that we can grow the capability. And then a big one, coming back to the research that Gartner did around connection and managers being connectors, is really cultivating the skill of coaching and connecting. How do I consistently have conversations that supports from a coaching point of view, but also connects? Where are you at? What are you struggling with? What are your aspirations? How can I connect you to a team? How can I connect you to other managers or other departments in our business? That, I think, is the skill. If I had to highlight kind of one skill, that's really what we're needing to grow for our line managers. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Lumai. Thanks, Lumai. Thanks, Storm. I think that was really awesome. And I'm sure several people probably ran out of note-taking space just because of your really valuable insights. So thank you. Yeah, so just as we end off, we thought maybe it will be useful if we can just share some lessons learned, but also success stories of how we co-created with clients ways to really equip those line managers to really be super, just actively involved in the talent management process and practices. So Storm, I don't know if you maybe want to take the mic and share a story or two with us, and I might just hop onto something that you're saying as well. So yeah, you can go for it.
Thank you. And I want to probably jump back to Lemay's last note that she left us with in terms of connecting. And one of the biggest lessons I learned is that we come from a space of talent management knowledge and a language that we use and understand amongst each other. My biggest learning was in terms of equipping our line managers and to engage with them at that level is to connect with them. And in order to connect with them is to speak their language. So I'm saying that because that's my lesson learned, because we can go and then we can say talent identification and potential and performance, and this adds up to us identifying who the top talent is, and we're like, well, what about the rest? What is talent? Are these our employees? So yeah, disclaimer, that was a huge piece, and I guess that was part of the learning, my learning to teach and equip others as part of that journey, and the message that had to be shared as we support our clients. So one of our clients in this space was two HCBPs from one of the companies that we work with. And so they're quite a big team. If you think about it, so they were really strict to one HCBP for 120 to 150 business leaders. And so the need that they reached out to us was, well, how do we cope with all of this, right? We've got these responsibilities annually. We're identifying our talent for succession, and we need to develop them, but we aren't close enough, and we need the support of alignment. So the need was recognized, right? So, well, tell us a bit about what goes on in the business. And so they had really great practices established and processes, the 9 boxes in place. They had all the tools in to identify potential in terms of getting objective data in through a psychometric assessment. They had 360s going on, 3D dialogues, which gave insightful information, right? And I said, cool, and so what happens from now? No, well, we've got it. Our line managers have it. So I said, okay, cool. Well, this is where we need to empower them to make use of that data and see how valuable it can be in terms of identifying our successes and supporting you in that process, and again, just shifting the responsibility. And so one, it was about the conversation that they had with those line managers, but second also, and this part of that learning journey is the experience. So putting your line managers in an experience of understanding what their role is and the impact thereof. So if you think about that learning and experiences, well, why am I here? What is in it for me? What is that change management mindset that we need to start growing? And so what we did was we created an Lisa and May also talked to. It's quite something we're quite proud of. We call it talent pursuit, and I really only want to talk to part of it. But taking our line managers through an experiential simulation immersion of what it looks like if you've got this in the right place and you've got your data. So let's create a talent profile that sums this individual up, that's kept update regularly with the information you get, so that when you get into a conversation with it, you can talk to it. And when you're needing to pull that data out to make decisions, those good talent management decisions, you can pull from that, right? And so we simulated a piece here where we had a couple of persona profiles along with talent profiles. We had the data plotted out there for performance and potential. In this time, particularly used 9box. And we said, with this in front of you, how easy is it to make a call? Like, you can, you don't have to fall victim to the data that you see here, but you can take so much, you can take ownership of it, and you can really drive a lot based on what you've got in front of you. And there were a couple of where the pennies dropped and aha moments. I could sit there and I see, right, I plotted my individual on this 9box, and this better informs the way in which I'm going to put them forward, whether I'm going to develop them, and then again interacted with a lot of the other practices that they needed to have and a bit of the other journey. But I don't want to steal the limelight in the rest of the story. It is kind of a big project. We went really closely with them. But so the key message here was just partnering in terms of how we communicate and connect with them to empower them. But then secondly, also just immersing them in the experience of what this potentially looks like and how good it can be if taking on the tools that are provided to you. It's in the business. It's great. Let's just make use of it and see what that impact looks like through a bit of a play situation. Yeah, I can waffle on. I got this, Lisa.
I can see you're getting more passionate and passionate as you're talking. I am looking at the time as well, and I do want, to just make sure there's time for quick Q&A. I'll maybe very quickly just add to that. So, also for one of the large financial institutions we're working with, we actually created like a 90-minute, so not super long, but a 90-minute development masterclass for line leaders specifically. And I think similar to Storm's example, the first example, they have really nice comprehensive frameworks and philosophies and principles and models in place, but the line managers across this massive group actually don't really know how to use it or how this should look like and what that requires from their role. So we just tried to make it quite practical for them. So what we did is we designed that masterclass to be a full immersive experience. So we created immersion activities like how does it look like if we say I need to understand my employee? So we would take them through an activity like that, giving them persona profiles and talent profiles and PDPs that they need to study to actually learn how to understand their employee. We did things like role playing, how to have aspirational and development conversations. So we would give them kind of a loose script or guide rather, and take them through things like that. And another thing I can remember is also giving them an experience to co-create with your employee really nice, meaningful development plans. So we would give them, Lumay shared it earlier, some development cards, and we teach them how to think intentionally about talent development. So what do I keep in mind? Energy, time, monetary investments, return on investment, well-being, etc. We gave them toolkits and things like that as well. So just really making it real and personal and practical for the line manager. Okay, but that's where I'll stop. Lumay, do you have any story or lesson learned that you want to add?
Yeah, maybe what I'm seeing that between the two of you, obviously, I think the focus is learning by doing, right? We're not just shoving a framework at you and you need to read it and go and figure it out in the real world. We'll give you the theory and you go figure it out in your real world. We bring the real world to you, and that's actually how we disseminate or communicate the information through to you, is while we are busy doing it. And I think that's line managers don't have the time to figure it out on their own. We have to figure it out. When we're giving it to you, we're going to figure it out somewhere, while we're busy. Another example was with a retail slash insurance organization, and they a lot of the interventions that we created with them was for specific talent pools, because it's such a big organization, they needed to segment. But some of the lessons learned in terms of equipping the line managers was that we used fun, short, exciting modalities, if you will. Because we realize, and maybe this is something that a lot of us struggle and a lot of our clients struggle with, we are just another thing on the list of the line manager of what they need to do. They are survey fatigued, they are overwhelmed by everything else. And so let's take a lesson from our marketing friends who know how to create something exciting, and amidst all of the feeds of what's coming through, they know how to let something stand out. And so that's really, I think, some of the lessons for us as well. When we want to communicate a message, let's create a really cool, exciting video that has depth in terms of the message that we want to share, but that's also exciting and fun and something different. So we used a lot of animations and videos, and it doesn't look like the typical animation. That's also the mistake, is I think people, if they've seen the same stick man saying the same things with the same music, it's better than nothing, but they also recognize, and then they'll start it off, and the brain just kind of switches off. So how do we design really exciting videos or tools or immersions, or we've even one of the things that Storm, Lisa, and I created is, there's a game that we played when we were little where I for the life of me can't remember the name of this, but where some of you will remember.
Chatterbox.
A chatterbox.
Yeah.
There we go.
Chatterbox.
Where we asked them to play the chatterbox game, and we created a chatterbox game with a new framework, and where you need to open it up and share information. And so that's really just the encouragement, is let's bring energy, fun, excitement into it, because we know it ups the learning for line managers. If we're just emailing out or death by PowerPointing something to a line manager and expecting them to take it on amidst everything else that they're busy with, we're not doing what we need to be doing. We need to up the SEO, if you will. The brain has a natural search engine optimization system, and we need to hijack that in some way so that the people agenda is higher up. It's either more exciting, or they understand why it's important to them, or they just enjoy it. But let's hack into that. And I think a lot of what we've learned in terms of what works and what doesn't work has been largely around lessons learned in that area. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks, Lumay. I think before we go and think about what's for dinner tonight, we do have a good 10 minutes left. So this is your opportunity, everyone. If you have a question for Lumay and Storm, please unmute yourself, raise your hand, post it in the chat box, whatever you are comfy with. But that would be really cool to hear from a few of you. So the floor is open. Anyone that wants to ask anything.
Or comment.
Or comment.
Or co-share.
Or share a lesson learned. If you're a slow typer, just let me know. I will wait for you. My eye is on the chat. Cool. That's awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the notes and the feedback. Then, we had an awesome time with you. So thanks for joining us. And now you are allowed to go think what is for dinner. And hopefully we can connect after this. So have a good evening and hope to chat soon.